They forged my name and told me to die. But they forgot one thing. The house was still mine. The first time my son told me I was ruining his life, I thought he was joking. We were standing in the kitchen of the new house in Florida, sunlight pouring through the tall windows I had paid for. The marble countertops were still spotless. The paint barely dry. I had just unpacked my suitcase in the small guest room at the end of the hall. My slitters were still folded. My slippers were still in my bag. "You just moved in," he said, his voice tight. "And already everything feels crowded." Crowded. I looked around at the open floor plan, the vaulted ceilings, the 4 bedrooms upstairs. Crowded. I had sold my home of 34 years so they could afford this place. Sold the garden, where I buried my husband's ashes beneath the rosebush. Sold the porch where my son used to sit, with scraped knees and popsicles dripping down his wrist. Sold the yellow kitchen where we survived grief together after his father died. I sold it all so he wouldn't struggle. And now I was crowded. Sarah didn't say anything. She never said much when it came to me. She just stood there wiping the already clean counter. Her lips pressed thin, her silence louder than his words. "I'll stay out of the way," I told him. I meant it. I had always meant it. The first week I tried to be small. I woke before everyone else. I made my coffee quietly and drank it standing by the sink. I folded laundry no one asked me to fold. I watched my grandson from the porch but never interfered when he cried. By the 3rd day, there were 4 plates on the table at dinner instead of 5. No one mentioned it. I washed my single plate afterward and returned to my room. At night I heard them whispering. "She's always here," Sarah said once, her voice sharp through the wall. "She won't live forever," my son replied. They laughed softly. I lay in the dark staring at the ceiling, wondering when my presence had turned into a countdown. The call from the bank came on a Tuesday morning. I was in the laundry room, pairing socks. "Mrs. Evelyn Parker?" the woman asked. "We're just confirming your home equity loan application for $215,000. My fingers went still. I didn't apply for a loan. There was a pause. "Your signature is here," she said carefully. "On the property at Orange Grove Lane." My heart didn't race, it slowed. "I didn't sign anything," I repeated. By noon I was sitting in a cold office staring at papers with my name printed neatly across the top, and a signature that tried to look like mine. It wasn't. The loop on the P was wrong. My son had never noticed how I curved my letters. But I had. I walked back into that house differently. I didn't confront him immediately. I waited. At dinner, halfway through Sarah's reheated casserole, I laid the papers on the table. "What's this?" he asked. "You tell me." He scanned the page. His jaw tightened. "We needed it," he snapped. "You live here, it's your house too." "My house? Did you forge my name?" I asked quietly. He slammed his hand on the table so hard my grandson flinched. "You don't understand pressure. We're drowning. You sit here doing nothing while we carry everything." Nothing. I had given them the down payment. I had given them my savings. I had given them my home. "You ruined our lives," he said, standing now. "If you hadn't moved in, none of this would have happened. Sometimes I think." He stopped himself. "Think what?" I asked. He looked at me, and something inside him hardened. "Sometimes I think it would be easier if you just died already." The room went silent. She didn't protest. She just stared at her plate. My grandson's tablet continued playing cartoon music, cheerful and oblivious. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I reached into my cardigan pocket and pressed stop on the small recorder. I had started caring after the bank called. His face drained of color. "You recorded me." "Why?" "Because I needed to hear it clearly. He told me to get out, so I did, but not that night." First I opened the folder at the bottom of my suitcase. The deed, the title. The mortgage documents. Owner of record Evelyn M. Parker. Only me they had assumed I transferred after closing. I hadn't. There had always been an excuse to delay, insurance rates. Paperwork. Timing, they had forgotten. I hadn't. The house was legally mine. Fully, completely. They were living under my roof. I called my husband's old attorney the next morning. "I need to reclaim something," I told him. He listened. He always had. Within days, we filed a fraud report. The forged loan application triggered an investigation. Sarah's name surfaced on the digital submission records. IP addresses don't lie. Neither do signatures. I updated my will. Every asset I owned was redirected to charities. A women's shelter, the public library. A veterans fund my husband once supported. My son and his wife were excluded by name. If anything suspicious happened to me, the recordings would be released publicly. I didn't threaten. I prepared. Then I rented an apartment in a senior community overlooking the river. 12 months stayed in full, on a Wednesday morning. While they were out meeting a financial advisor, I packed, not angrily. Carefully, I took my jewelry, my documents, my husband's photograph, the antique pie dish my mother gave me. I left the furniture. I left the tension. I left a wooden box on the kitchen table. Inside was a copy of the deed, the fraud complaint, the updated will, a letter. This house does not belong to you. It never did. You lived here because I allowed it. That permission is revoked. By noon I was gone. On the 7th day the missed calls began. 1. Then 20, 9 plus. No voicemails at first. Just desperation ringing into silence. When the bank froze the loan and the investigation escalated, Sarah was placed on leave from her job. When my attorney filed a formal notice asserting sole ownership of the home, their mortgage refinancing collapsed. I received a text. We need to talk. I didn't respond. Another. It wasn't supposed to go this far. I attached the audio clip. If she'd sent it back. No words. Just his voice. 2 days later, he left a voicemail. I didn't mean it. But he had. People always mean it in the moment they say it, they just don't mean the consequences. I never pressed criminal charges, I didn't have to. The fear of them was enough. I gave them 60 days to vacate. Legally, formally, quietly. The house was sold 6 months later. At a profit. The money funded my travels. I went to Savannah first. Then Montreal. Then I joined a group called Golden Miles. Women over 60 who had stopped waiting for permission to be happy. We laughed too loudly in restaurants. We wore bright scarves. We ordered dessert without splitting it. On a cruise through the Danube, I met a man named Samuel. He asked if I wanted the last roll at dinner. Only if you'll take half, I said. We held hands under foreign stars. He never asked about my money. He never called me a burden. He never made me feel like an expiration date. Sometimes my phone still lights up with my son's name. I don't block it. I let her in. Not out of clarity. Motherhood is not martyrdom. Love is not unlimited credit. And forgiveness does not require re-entry. The day he told me I ruined his life was the day I realized I had been living inside it too long. The day he told me to die was the day I started living. I paint now. Poorly but joyfully. My roses look like cabbages, my clouds resemble potatoes. But they are mine. I sit on my balcony in the evenings and watch the river move steadily forward. No one shouts. No one whispers behind closed doors. No one waits for me to disappear. They forged my name. They tried to borrow against my life. They mistook kindness for weakness. They mistook age for ignorance. They mistook silence for surrender. They forgot one thing. The house was still mine. And so was I. The first night in my new apartment, I slept with the windows cracked open. Not because it was warm. But because I could. There is a certain kind of quiet that only comes when no one resents your breathing. It isn't the absence of sound. It's the absence of tension. No footsteps outside your door. No lowered voices slipping through drywall. No feeling that every cough, every kettle whistle, every floorboard creak is one complaint away from becoming an argument. I lay in the dark and realized something that startled me. I was not afraid. For years, I had lived with a soft, constant fear. Fear of disappointing my son. Fear of Sarah becoming too much, too old, too slow, too needy, too present. Fear shrinks you. It teaches you to fold yourself smaller and smaller until you barely recognize the shape you've become. That night, for the first time in a long while, I stretched my arms wide across the mattress. No one told me to move over. The next morning, I made eggs with onions and peppers. The way my husband liked them. I hadn't cooked them in years because Mark once said the smell lingered too long in the house. In my house. I laughed when I realized that. There is a difference between losing something and releasing it. I had lost my son slowly, over years of excuses and distance. But I had released him the moment I walked out that door. He called again on the 10th day. This time I answered. There was silence on the line at first, as if he didn't expect to hear my voice. Mum. Yes. You left. I did. You didn't even say goodbye. You told me to get out. I didn't think you would. There it was again. The assumption. The belief that I would absorb anything and remain. I don't understand why you're doing this, he said, his voice tightening. We were under pressure. People make mistakes. Forgery is not a mistake, I replied. It's a decision. He exhaled sharply. We needed the money. You had my money. That wasn't enough. Nothing is ever enough for someone who sees you as a resource. You wished I were dead, I said, not angrily. Just plainly. Silence again. I didn't mean it like that. How did you mean it? He didn't answer. I loved you, I continued. I still do. But love is not permission to harm me. You're destroying our family. No, I said softly. I'm refusing to let you destroy me. He hung up first, he always did. A week later, I received an email from Sarah. Not apologetic. Not exactly. We're trying to make this right, she wrote. The investigation is causing serious problems. Mark is under stress. The children are confused. We never expected you to take things this far. That sentence stayed with me. We never expected you to take things this far. As if self-defense were escalation. As if reclaiming my name were aggression. I typed a reply and erased it 3 times before sending. You took it this far when you signed my name without consent. I am simply standing where I should have stood sooner. I did not engage further. Instead, I enrolled in a writing workshop at the community center downstairs. The instructor, a retired journalist with silver braids and sharp eyes, asked us to write about a turning point. When it was my turn to read, my hands trembled slightly. I realized I was only welcome when I was useful. I read aloud. The moment I required respect instead of offering sacrifice, I became an inconvenience. The room was quiet, not pitying, understanding. Afterward, a woman named Dolores squeezed my hand. I left my daughter's house for the same reason, she whispered. They only loved me when I babysat. There is comfort in shared awakening. I began volunteering at the library twice a week, shelving children's books. The plaque with my name from years ago was still mounted near the reading corner. Evelyn Parker, Donner. I ran my fingers over the letters. I had once thought being remembered required sacrifice. Now I understood it required boundaries. The legal process moved steadily. Mark and Sarah vacated the house before the 60 days ended. My attorney informed they had moved to a rental 2 towns over. Smaller, no yard, no screen porch. The irony did not escape me. I did not celebrate their discomfort. But I did not rescue them either. The house sold quickly. The market was favorable. The profit was clean and legal and entirely mine. When the funds hit my new account, I sat at my small kitchen table and stared at the numbers. Not because of the amount. Because of the sim they had tried to extract more from me. Instead, I had multiplied what I kept. Months passed. The missed calls slowed. Then stopped. Occasionally, a birthday message would appear. Hope you're well. I responded once. I am, nothing more. Samuel visited in spring. He brought tulips and a book of poetry. We sat on the balcony and watched the boats drift along the river. Do you miss him? He asked gently. My son. I considered the question carefully. I miss who he was, I said. Or who I believed he was. And who are you now? Samuel asked. I smiled. I am not a burden. I am not a backup plan. I am not a wallet with a heartbeat. I am a woman who survived loving someone who stopped loving her well. He nodded, as if that answer made perfect sense. We did not rush anything. At our age, urgency feels unnecessary. Affection grows slowly, up ivy climbing brick. One evening, nearly a year after I left, there was a knock at my door. I wasn't expecting anyone. When I opened it, Mark stood there. He looked older, not in years but in wear. He held nothing in his hands. No flowers, no gifts, just himself. I got your address from Jean, he said quietly. You look different. So do you. He glanced past me into the apartment, taking in the soft lighting, the framed watercolor attempts on the wall, the absence of tension. Can I come in? I considered it. This time, I had the choice. Yes, I said finally. He sat on the couch as if unsure whether he belonged there. A mess, he began. Yes. I was angry. I felt like I was failing. Providing, competing. Everything felt like it was slipping. And stealing from me felt like control, I asked. He winced. I didn't think of it as stealing. That's the problem. He stared at his hands. I thought you'd always forgive me. I might, I said softly. But forgiveness is not access. He looked up at that. I don't expect you to move back, he added quickly. There is no moving back. I don't want you gone. I studied his face. For the first time I saw not entitlement but regret. Regret is different from panic, it is quieter. Less frantic. I am not gone, I said. I am simply no longer available for harm. He swallowed. Can we start over? I thought about the years. The recordings. The sentence he had thrown at me like a stone. Starting over requires truth. I replied. Not convenience. I was ashamed. He admit money. About not measuring up when you moved in. It felt like proof I couldn't stand on my own. I moved in because you asked. I reminded him. He nodded slowly. I know. Silence settled between us. Not hostile. Just honest. I don't know what kind of relationship we'll have, I said finally. But it will not be built on my sacrifice. He stood to leave. Thank you for letting me come, he said. I am not your enemy, I told him. But I am no longer your safety net. When the door closed behind him, I did not collapse. I did not question myself. I returned to my balcony and watched the river move steadily forward. Some stories do not end with dramatic reunions or permanent estrangement. Some end with balance. He will have to earn whatever place he occupies in my life now. And I will decide how large that place is. They forged my name. They told me to die. They believed I would shrink. Instead I expanded. Into my own space. Into my own voice. Into a life that does not require permission. The house was mine. The silence is mine. The future is mine. And this time I am not signing it over to anyone. After Mark left the evening, I expected to feel something dramatic. Rage, relief, triumph. Instead I felt steady. That surprised me more than anything. For most of my life my emotions had been tied to his. If he was happy, I felt useful. If he was struggling, I felt responsible. If he was angry, I felt guilty. That cord had finally been cut, not violently. Cleanly. The next morning I received a text. Thank you for seeing me. I'll give you space. It was the first time he had ever offered me space instead of taking it. I didn't reply immediately. I let the message sit. The way I used to let bread dough rise. Some things need time before you decide what they are. In the weeks that followed, he didn't call. He didn't show up unannounced. He sent a short message on Mother's Day. I hope you feel appreciated today. It wasn't poetic, it wasn't long. But it wasn't entitled either. I typed back 3 words. I am learning to. That was enough. Summer arrived slowly, bringing heat that wrapped around the city like a thick blanket. I began walking every morning before sunrise. The river looked different at that hour, softer, forgiving. One morning, I passed a young mother pushing a stroller while juggling her phone and a coffee cup. The baby began crying, sharp and insistent. The woman looked overwhelmed. Without thinking, I stepped closer. Would you like me to hold your coffee? I asked gently. She hesitated for only a second before handing it to me. She adjusted the blanket, kissed the baby's forehead, and whispered something that quieted him almost instantly. Thank you, she said. It's just a lot. I know, I replied. And I handed her the coffee back and continued walking. For the first time in a long while, helping someone didn't feel like erasing myself, it felt like choosing. That distinction changed everything. Samuel visited again in August. We cooked together in my small kitchen, bumping elbows, laughing at how we'd both forgot where I kept the salt. Do you ever regret leaving? He asked while slicing tomatoes. No, I said without hesitation. Not even a little. I regret staying as long as I did. He studied me carefully. You don't sound bitter. I'm not. That was the truth. Bitterness requires constant rehearsal of the injury. I was done rehearsing. Instead, I started writing letters. Not to send. Just to release. One to my younger self. You do not have to earn love by suffering. One to my husband. I wish you had seen me reclaim myself, you would have been proud. One to Mark. I loved you fiercely. I am learning to love myself with the same intensity. I sealed them in envelopes and placed them in my nightstand. Not as reminders of pain, but as proof of growth. In early autumn, I received a call from an unfamiliar number. I almost didn't answer. Mrs. Parker? A woman asked. This is the housing attorney assigned to your former property. I just wanted to confirm everything is fully resolved. It is, I said calmly. No further disputes, no claims from your son, no. There was a pause. If you don't mind me saying, she added. It's rare to see someone handle a situation like you without escalating it into something uglier. I smiled slightly. Peace is more expensive than revenge, I replied. But it lasts longer. After I hung up, I realized something quietly powerful. The legal chapter was closed. Completely. No loose ends. No lingering threat. The house was sold. The fraud case was settled. My name was clean, and my conscience was clear. That evening, Mark called again. This time I answered on the second ring. Hi, he said. Hi. I wanted to let you know I started therapy. I didn't speak for a moment. That's good, I said finally. I should have done it years ago. Yes. He laughed softly, but it wasn't defensive. It's uncomfortable, he admitted. Growth usually is. I've been thinking about what you said. About forgiveness not meaning access. I know. He paused. I'm not asking for anything. I just wanted you to know I'm trying. Trying. That word used to be enough to pull me back into rescue mode. Now, it's simply registered as information. I hope you keep trying, I said. We talked for 15 minutes. Neutral things. The weather was new, job. The children. When we hung up, I didn't feel drained. That was new. Relationships should not feel like emergency rooms. They should feel like conversations. Winter approached, and with it, the citrus tree outside my window began to bloom again. The scent drifted into my apartment in the evenings, sweet and stubborn. I stood by the window one night and whispered something I hadn't said aloud in years. I forgive you. Not because he asked. Not because he deserved it yet, but because I deserved to let go. Forgiveness, I learned, is not reopening the door. It's locking it without anger. Months later, Mark invited me to my grandson's school recital. I understand if you don't want to come, he added quickly. I considered the invitation carefully. I will come, I said. But I will leave if I feel disrespected. That won't happen, he assured me. When I arrived at the auditorium, my grandson spotted me immediately. Grandma, he shouted, running toward me. I knelt down and hugged him tightly. Children remember love even when adults complicate it. Mark stood a few feet away, watching quietly. There was no tension in his posture. No resentment in his eyes. Just something softer. After the recital he walked me to my car. Thank you for coming, he said. I came for him. I know. He hesitated. I'm still working on being better. I hope you are, I replied. Then I added something I hadn't planned to say. You hurt me deeply. But that doesn't mean I stopped loving you. It just means I stopped letting hurt me. His eyes filled briefly. I understand, he whispered. And I believed that, this time, he might. When I drove back to my apartment, I felt neither victorious nor defeated. I felt balanced. They forged my name. They told me to die. They believed I would disappear quietly. Instead, I stepped forward. I reclaimed my life. I redefined my boundaries. And in doing so, I gave my son something I never could have given him before. Consequences, not as punishment. As truth. I sit on my balcony now, wrapped in a soft blanket, the river moving endlessly below. Samuel's hand rests gently over mine. The sky is streaked with orange and violet. I'm glad you didn't stay, he says quietly. So am I reply. The house was mine. But more importantly, so was my life. And I finally learned how to lit it without apology. I remember the exact sound the pen made. It was a soft, deliberate scratch against paper, slow, careful, pretending to be mine. I was in the hallway when I heard it. My name. My signature. My life being rewritten in a room I paid for. I didn't walk in right away. I stood there listening to the murmur of my son's voice and the low, nervous whisper of his wife. It has to match exactly, she said. It will, he replied. She won't even notice. That was the first moment something inside me cracked. I stepped into the room quietly. They both jumped like children caught stealing candy. What are you doing? I asked. My son smiled too fast. Nothing, Mom, just paperwork. Paperwork. The folder was half closed, but I saw it. My name in thick black ink. The tail of the R in my signature curved wrong. I've signed that name for 68 years. I know every bend of it like either the lines in my palms. You're signing for me now? I asked softly. His wife stood up first. Defensive. You said you were tired. We're just helpin'. I didn't ask for help. My son's jaw tightened. Why does it matter? It's just the house. Just the house. The house I bought with overtime shifts. The house I scrubbed with bleeding hands after his father died. The house where he took his first steps on the hardwood floors I paid for in cash. Just the house. I repeated. He looked at me like I was a burden, like I was slowing down his future. You can't take care of it anymore. We need stability. You should be grateful we're handling things. Grateful. For being erased. I'm not senile, I said quietly. No one answered that. His wife picked up the paper and slipped it into the folder. You get confused, Margaret. Confused. I felt my stomach turn. The same way it did the day I buried my husband. I'm not confused, I said. And that's not my signature. My son's face changed then. The softness vanished. Something colder replaced it. You don't have to make this difficult. Difficult. I looked at him and saw a stranger wearing my child's face. I'll call the lawyer, I said. He laughed. Actually laughed. You mean the one who thinks you're giving us the house voluntarily? The room went silent. I felt the blood drain from my face. What did you tell him? That you wanted to transfer ownership early. Before you deteriorate. The word hung between us like smoke. His wife folded her arms. It's for everyone's benefit. For whose benefit? I whispered. Neither of them answered. I walked back to my bedroom without another word. My knees felt weak, but I refused to show it. I locked the door behind me. Then I sat on the edge of my bed and stared at my hands. Those hands raised him. Those hands packed his lunches. Those hands held his feverish head at 3 in the morning. And those hands had never once betrayed him. I picked up my phone and called Mr. Daniels, my lawyer. He answered on the third ring. Margaret. I was just reviewing the transfer documents. I didn't sign anything, I said. There was a pause. I beg your pardon. I did not authorize any transfer. That signature is not mine. Silence. Then, carefully, are you certain? I felt something inside me harden. Yes, I'm certain. He exhaled slowly. Then we have a problem. Yes. I said. We do. By the time I came out of my room, my son and his wife were gone. But the folder was missing too. That night, I didn't sleep. I thought about every sacrifice I made. Every dream I postponed so he could go to college. The extra shifts. The holidays spent alone so he could travel. The money I handed over when he said he needed just a little help. I thought about the first time he looked at me with impatience instead of love. I realized something painful. It didn't happen overnight. It happened slowly, like water wearing down stone. The next morning, I made coffee like I always did. When they came downstairs, I placed 2 envelopes on the kitchen table. What's this? My son asked. Documentation, I said calmly. For what? For fraud. His wife's face drained of color. You're overreacting, she snapped. No, I replied. My son slammed his hand on the table. Are you seriously threatening us? I'm protecting myself. You'd destroy your own family over paperwork. I looked at him for a long moment. You tried to destroy me first. He stared at me like he didn't recognize the woman sitting in front of him. Maybe I didn't recognize myself either. He picked up the envelope and ripped it open. Inside were copies of the property deed dated and notarized. Only my name. Always my name. You can't live here alone, he muttered. I have for years. That was different. How? There it was. Old. Disposable. Replaceable. I'm not dead yet, I said. His wife laughed under her breath. Not yet. The words sliced through me. My son didn't correct her. That hurt more than anything. I stood up slowly. You have 30 days to move out. The room exploded. You can't be serious. You'd throw us out. You'd make us homeless. I met his eyes. You were ready to make me invisible. He ran a hand through his hair, pacing. No. I said quietly. I'm being clear. His wife stepped closer to me. You'll regret this. I already regret too much. They didn't believe me. They thought I would bend. I didn't. Over the next week. The house filled with tension thick enough to choke on. They whispered behind closed doors, made phone calls, tried to convince me to reconsider. One night, I overheard something worse than the forged signature. I wish she'd just die already, my son said. The words came through the baby monitor they still used to listen for their toddler. She's ruining everything. My breath stopped. His wife replied. Then we wouldn't have to wait. I stood there in the dark hallway, my heart pounding so loudly thought it would burst through my chest. I raised him. I protected him. And now he was waiting for me to disappear. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I walked back to my room and closed the door. Then I made another call. Mr. Daniels answered immediately this time. I want to update my will, I said. What did you have in mind? I want to remove my son. There was silence on the line. That's a significant decision. Yes, I said. It is. We scheduled a meeting. I didn't tell anyone. The following week, I sold the small investment property I'd kept secret for years. The one I bought after my husband died. The proceeds were substantial. Enough to ensure comfort. Enough to ensure independence. On the 30th day I stood in the doorway as my son carried out the last box. He wouldn't look at me. His wife glared openly. You're making a mistake, she said. Perhaps, I replied. But it's mine to make. My grandson looked confused. He reached for me. I knelt down and kissed his forehead. I love you? I whispered. My son finally met my eyes. You'll regret this when you're alone. I held his gaze steadily. I'd rather be alone than unwanted. He opened his mouth, then closed it. The door shut. The house went silent. For the first time in months I could breathe. But peace didn't come immediately. It came slowly. Like healing. 3 weeks later, my phone started ringing. Unknown numbers, voicemails. Plead him, we need to talk, we're sorry. It's hard out here. 99 missed calls in 2 days. I listened to one voicemail. Just one. I didn't mean what I said, he whispered. I was stressed. I turned off the phone. Stress doesn't forge signatures. Stress doesn't wish death on your mother. Months passed. I repainted the living room. I planted roses in the garden. I hosted neighbors for tea, people who looked at me with respect, not calculation. One afternoon Mr. Daniels visited with finalized documents. It's done, he said gently. Everything. Yes. The house, my savings, the investment profits, all placed into a trust. Beneficiaries, a local scholarship fund and a women's shelter. My son received nothing. Not even the furniture. Are you certain? Mr. Daniels asked. I looked around the room. We're at a life from ashes. I'm certain. That winter was quiet. Lonely at times, but clean. No whispers behind doors. No stolen signatures, no waiting for my death. On my birthday, there was a knock at the door. I knew who it was before I opened it. He looked thinner. Older. Desperate. I didn't invite him in. I'm sorry, he whispered. For what? For everything. His voice broke. And for a moment, I saw the little boy who used to cling to my leg when he was afraid of thunder. Do you love me? He asked. I swallowed hard. Yes, I said. But love doesn't mean surrender. He stared at me. I needed the house, you needed control. Tears slid down his face. I was scared. So was I. He looked past me into the hallway. Can I come home? The question hung in the air. Home. I thought about the forged signature. The laughter. The words I wished she'd just die. I stepped back, but not to let him in. To close the door. You're my son, I said softly. But this house is still mine. And then I shut it. Not in anger. Not in cruelty. But in peace. Because I finally understood something that took me 68 years to learn. Love without respect is just another form of theft. And I was done being robbed.